Uh, First, in terms of announcements, and a very important one, we are here to witness the retirement of Kennedys, Bob Kennedy and Bev Kennedy, who have devoted a lot of their life to this institution and are really responsible for this museum being a reality. Bob has served as curator of the museum from its inauguration in 1999 to the present, after having worked as a professor for a couple of 3 decades before that. So he's had a long tenure, and a lot of the development of this thing is due to him. His wife Beverly has served about every possible role other than curator in the museum. She's been the president of the society. She's been the treasurer of the society. She's edited the newsletter for many, many issues. And so we're going to have a small reception for them. You can see some of the goodies here after we're finished. So please stay around for a piece of cake and some good discussion. Second, I want to tell you that the board of the society has made a couple of appointments. One is that we have appointed Rebecca Lively to be the media consultant for the group, a role that has needed filling for a long time. She generously volunteered, and so she'll be assuming that role here as soon as media is over, I suppose. And the board also appointed a new curator, and that falls to me, for better or for worse. So I'll be changing to that role here. And third, I wanted to remind you that it is time for those of you that are annual members of the group to renew that membership. So we'd appreciate it if you could do that this month sometime. And now I have 3 items of business. Our bylaws say that we are supposed to conduct an annual business meeting of the whole group, kind of beyond the board. And so that's what this is here for the next few minutes. And there are 3 items of official business as part of that. And it represents 3 things that the board has proposed that we would like to have discussion on and ultimately your approval for. One is that we have amended the bylaws in 2 different ways. One is that the original bylaws had it that the board was to meet quarterly before this quarterly general session. And what we found is that we didn't have enough time to get anything done before the general session started. So we have amended the bylaws to say that the board can meet whenever they see fit to meet, not necessarily be tied the one meeting with the other meeting. So a fairly simple thing. Another bylaw change that we propose is that formally to sign a check on behalf of the association, we had 2 signatures required. We find that we're about the only thing left in the world that requires 2 signatures. And so we have amended that so that on behalf of the society, the president or the vice president or the treasurer can now write checks in that regard. And then the third item is that we have a new slate of officers for you to consider and people approve of. The board for 2025 recommends that Terry Wilson, our former mayor, become the new president of the society. We further recommend that Mark Randall, many of you remember as the former city manager of Pleasant Hill, to become our new vice president. And closer to my heart, I suppose, for a new secretary, we recommend Donna Shoemaker, replacing Rebecca as Rebecca goes to her new job. And so those 3 would be new people. Continuing, we recommend that Lynn Lively go ahead with her role as treasurer and Henry Saubers with his position as the member that's the official items. I want to open the floor to any discussion you have to the new board that's being proposed, or either of those two amendments to the bylaws. Any questions about them, anything concerns anybody? Think about it for a minute. If you do, please feel free to sound off, if you will.
Motion to accept as presented.
Well, that's, if there is no other feelings about that, that's fine. I hear a motion to accept. Is there a second to that?
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? Those in favor of accepting those changes, if you signify by raising your hand. Any opposed? And we'll consider this business meeting concluded then at that point. All right, now, the part that you came for and ready to go for. We have, I find it strange, I guess because I've been around so long, I find that there are some people who don't seem to be aware that we once had a Nike base in this town. But we really were an Army community for quite a while. Very exciting time. When I was in high school, all the girls were pretty much gaga over those Nike guys that were coming in. So we're going to hear maybe a little bit about that, but more about the base in general from Phil Moore. For those of you that don't know Phil, he, among many things, is a lifetime member of the Historical Association here. We're very happy about that. He served as the head man at the Nike base during the time that it was under the aegis of the National Guard. So we'll explain about that and its changing nature of the base itself. And most interesting to me, he is a long-time breeder of high-quality donkeys. And those of you who like jackasses, boy, he's the guy you need to know. So I enjoyed talking to him yesterday about all of that. And without further ado, I give you the Colonel, Phil Moore, and his brand new pointer. And we'll see what he has to say. Thank you.
Looking around, I think Greenheart and I are the only two people that were active out there. Is there anybody else here I'm overlooking?
His chair's up in the middle here.
This is Greenheart, this guy right here. And he was a dog handler out there for us, and he was also a buddy of mine. We sold dairy cows sometimes. But anyway, I came yesterday to look at the paper because I didn't know anything about this Nike site until January of 1964. But see, the active Army had run it before then. So reviewing the Pleasantville Times, I looked in there, and in May 16th of 1957, they had an article in there saying there was going to maybe be a Nike site here in Pleasantville. And then in August that year, they said they're going to be 104 guys working this Nike site, and they're going to make $24,000 a year from all 104 of them, so that's $2,000 a piece or something for the lower guys. And so that was in there, and then they decided a little bit later on that the Nike site would be somewhere in the triangle between Pleasantville and Lojack and Strasburg. And so they were looking around all the farm owners that didn't like their land enough, they let them put a Nike site in there and explaining to them. And they were going to tell everybody about it on August the 22nd of 57. And so they had a meeting at the Memorial Building, and there was 180 people showed up. So that's a bigger crowd than we got here today. And then in the 26th of September, they said, the United States government's getting poor. They may have budget cuts, and the Nike site may not ever come here. And then on June the next year, they said, oh, yeah, we're going to have a Nike site. And they put out bids to build it. And I got 2 pages. Well, I looked in a lot of paper yesterday, didn't you? Yeah, we're gonna build it. And they said, not only are we gonna build a Nike site there, they're gonna need housing for 30 families. And it needs to be ready in about 16 months for these 30 extra families to live here. And we expect the rents between $65 and $110 a month. So if you want a cheap house, you can run out and see if they're still available. And so they located the site later on in March, but they had a water problem. Not only did they have a water problem, in the paper it said the city lake was about dry too, and they had a picture of the lake surface being 20 feet low or something like that. But they had to go ahead and build a water line from Pleasant Hill out to KK where the Missle site ended up to get water out there, and they was water district number 5 later, I think it was. Then in July the 3rd of '58, they let the bids for all 4 sites. See, there were going to be 4 sites, one of them at Lawson, Excelsior Springs area, and one here in LoJack, and one over at Gardner, Kansas, and one on Fort Leavenworth itself. And so we had Kansas City protected on 4 sides. So anytime a bomber came in from any of the directions, why there'd be a Nike site ready to shoot that bomber down. And so the bids on those 4 sites is $5,659,696. You know, when they tore all those sites down, I bet it cost 4 times that much to get rid of all the asbestos pipe that we had in those Nike sites. And then in '59, they thought they'd be operational by the 1st of November, the active Army. They didn't make it, I don't think. I don't know how bad we missed it. But then the Army ran it for about 5 years. In 1962, they decided that the National Guard would be able to take over the Nike base, both here and one down in Dallas, Texas, about the same time. And I don't know what political shenanigans this involved. The state governments always like to have National Guard people because when they have tornadoes in Pleasant Hill like they did in '74, us critters will run out there and take care of things. That's guardsmen. And so the Nike people had a real job to do, and they weren't going to be involved in any floods or tornadoes or anything, but having people in the guard and being able to pay people in uniform and salary is important. So the National Guard is going to take over. So they started recruiting people to take over the Nike site. And the training for the Nike sites is down at Fort Bliss, Texas. And they also had a range down there, McGregor Range, where they did all these practice firings for the Nike site. But so they started hiring people, and most of the people they hired were either people that came off active duty, it might have been stationed here in LoJack, or it may have been people from like the state of Michigan that have Nike bases and guys come down here and get promoted. Or they may have been people like me that just wandered in, you know. And so, but they sent the guys that were here first down to Texas, to Fort Bliss, for training to be able to come back and take over the Nike base. And so they came back, and hi Mark, they came back and they were about ready to take over on the 15th of February. So if you show me the next picture, next picture.
Next picture.
I'll tell you a little bit about the Nike system, and I can prove that I know about it because I got a certificate right here that says I was an honor graduate of whatever, taking care of missile systems. But I'd already did it for 7 years before I took that class. But anyway, this is the fire control area. This is where we had the radar. And this is where we had acquisition radars that would pick up the airplane at 250,000 yards. And Then when they got to be within 200 yards, or 200,000 yards, the missile tracking and target tracking radars could operate in that distance. So this was the admin building here, and this is the building where the fire control crew lived, active Army. When we took over, everybody lived at home and just came there to work. And this is where the launch area was. And this was the mess hall. But up here you can see a radar and another one, and there's some vans in there. And that produced power for us when we went on system, because we had that 400 cycle power to operate this instead of 110. And so we had generators that converted electricals that came in to 400 cycle, or we had engines in there that would produce our own electricity. And so this is about what the fire control area looked like. And I'll talk about the missiles, the radars. See, one of these tracked the missile, and the other one tracked the target that was coming in. And we had a procedure where we found the target. We said, oh, this is the guy we want to shoot. And we transferred that over to the target tracking radar. And they had 3 men there, and they worried about azimuth, elevation, and range. And so they could pinpoint where this airplane was. And then the other one tracked the missile. And so give me the next slide, and we'll talk about the missile. I
Upside down.
turn it a little bit this way. One more time. There we go. Anyway, these were where the missiles were stored, and they were stored in the building underground. And that building was pretty big, because the missiles, if I remember correctly, were about 26 feet long, and they had 2 parts. They had a booster that had 4 solid fuel components to it, and then they had the missile itself, which also had an engine. And so when they shoot it, it'd go up in the air, and then they'd ignite the missile propellant, and it'd jerk away from the booster, and the booster would fall back on the ground. And because it's going to fall back on the ground, they had to get waivers from all the farmers around here, like Perry Hodges and other people you know, so that they wouldn't get too upset when that booster fell in their cornfield. So the missiles were down here, and we had a building where we put warheads in the missiles. And that was really a technical thing, because they were nuclear warheads. And Greenheart here, he had a place back over here where he kept his dog. And we had 4 dog handlers, and security was really important, because we had to cut the grass. We had, later on, the chain link fences, I don't think they're up there yet when this picture was taken. We had a chain link fence all the way around here, and we'd have to go around and make sure that there's only 2 inches between the ground and the bottom of that chain link fence. And so whenever we were getting ready for inspection, my Breen and I and all our crew would get out there and crawl around on the ground and cut grass under the chain link fence. And we had a guy with us from Oklahoma, and his name was Charlie Mars. Remember him? And Charlie Mars was afraid of snakes, just terrible. And so the guys, military guys, were not the nicest guys in the world. So they'd go along and they'd cut grass and everything. And somebody throw a stick over there by Charlie and say snake, and he'd about tear our fence out. But anyway, we had a ready barracks down there that the guys stayed in. I guess that's it. They're down here. And this is the warhead assembly building here, and there's some more generators. But this site had to be a distance from the target tracking radars, because when you shot that missile up, that booster made it go very fast. And unlike your cell phone, we had a computer that was 5 feet tall, 3 feet wide, had cathode ray tubes and all kinds of tubes in it that went out periodically, and had mechanical servos, so it wasn't as fast as the missile could go up. So you had to have the missile a long way away, 3/4 of a mile or more. So whenever it went up, this radar could keep track of it. And also, to keep track of it, it had to be able to follow it, know where it was, and know where the airplane was over here, and guide the missile to that airplane. And so the airplane was probably going to have a nuclear warhead in it, because he'd come all the way from Russia or somewhere, and he was going to blow up Kansas City, maybe Western Electric or down on the Bendix. Yeah, Bendix was a big deal. I remember after the missile site closed, I was military police, and I had to go down and write a plan to protect Bendix down there in case it was on the ground troops after. But anyway, so you had to have a distance between the two of them. And when I was in Alaska, they were always trying to improve things. And I fired 4 times from the missile site in Alaska while I was stationed up there. And so they put in a modification work order. And so these guys thought, you know, if we put this little system in there, it'll make tracking this missile better. And so we shot from this launcher pad here. That's where we did our annual practice from Alaska. And you can see the Cook Inlet out there, and you can see how far down it was. It made this missile tracking radar so sensitive that the missile went up and blew up, and that was the end of our service practice. But one time when I was up there, we had a missile worked, and we had a target drones that we shot at, or we had an airplane fly into us, and we'd offset the radar so it wouldn't tell the missile exactly where the airplane was, because we didn't want to shoot any of our friendly guys down. And I did fire an intercept of 135,000 feet. That was really a big deal. But then, about a month later, somebody shooting from Hawaii beat me out, so I never was famous anymore. So, any questions about how the system operates? Oh, I was talking about warheads. We had nuclear weapons because we didn't want the weapon on the airplane to come in. To make a nuclear bomb, roughly, you have to get all this radioactive material, and you have to crowd it in together so close that it doesn't like each other, and the protons, neutrons, electrons get all scrambled up and they blow up. And so, to keep that from happening, you had to incinerate the bomb before something else could make it go off with a bigger bomb. So that's why we had nuclear weapons out there.
Hey, Phil, how did you identify the target and deconflict with civilian and friendly military?
Every civilian aircraft is supposed to have something called identification, friend or foe. And so, if you queried it, it'd send back, I'm a friend, you know. It didn't always work. When I was in Alaska, they'd always wait for something to come in from the west, because that was where Russia was. And we'd see this airplane there, and we'd ask if it was friend or foe, and it wouldn't answer, so they'd call us up to be ready to shoot. We'd be sitting there, and they'd say, well, you can't shoot yet, can't shoot yet. We haven't identified it. Pretty soon we walk out and see Northwest Airlines land on We were really safe there. But Northwest Airlines is not a safe place to fly, but they wouldn't have let us fire unless they were pretty sure anyhow. Any other questions? That's probably a pretty good question.
How many missiles did you have?
More than I could ever paid for, because I was a battery officer at the end of the thing, and we had 16 nuclear weapons down there, and I was making about $10,000 a year, so I don't think my salary would have gone very far for paying for all that stuff. So that's how it was, and I think we're going to show a few pictures of guys you might know here. turn him around there. I'd have to see my thing there, but right there, Chuck Campbell, and he married, like you say, the girls all like the Missile guys. Well, he was one of the Missile guys here. He married some gal up there north of Lojack, and he's been a farmer up there forever. And this guy here was the guy I replaced because he came down from Michigan, and he was supposed to be in the package and everything, but then he got a better deal in Michigan, so they had a vacancy here in Pleasant Hill. You know, the situations that come forth in your life and make you do things and go places where you never dreamed you'd be are just unbelievable. But anyway, I graduated from high school in 1955, and I went to the University of Missouri, and I was somewhat poor, and so, you know, if you went to advanced ROTC after 2 years of ROTC mandatory for everybody that was able-bodied back then, you got $27 a month. And so $27 a month in 1957 was a big deal. So I took advanced ROTC, and then I graduated and I got a commission, and I said I wanted to be on active duty for 6 months. Well, somebody in their wisdom decided that anybody's name would begin with M.O., it was from Missouri, got 2 years. So that was me, Moore, Cease, Montgomery, and somebody else, you know. So I asked to go to Germany, and I asked to go to the Caribbean, and I asked to go to Alaska. Well, I got Alaska. And that was the best thing that ever happened. I loved it. So when I was in Alaska, they started asking for people that wanted to go to volunteer to Vietnam to train the Vietnamese people how to fight. And I thought, they already know how to fight. They're fighting now. And I don't really want to go to Vietnam. But later on, my battalion commander had a brain tumor. And we sent him to Beaumont, Texas, and he just checked himself out and came back and started chewing us all guys out. And I was one that never liked to be chewed out. So I asked to get off active duty, and I came back, and I was going to go and I was going to work for a Farm Service Agency, but Lyndon Johnson decided we'd better have pretty highways instead of Farm Service Agency people. And so I didn't have a job.
Ladybird.
Well, Ladybird, they wanted to beautify the highway. But anyway, so I went down to MU to get my engineering degree, because I had a degree in agriculture engineer, but I'd taken big boy engineering and only needed a couple classes. And on the way home, I went to see a sergeant that was stationed in the active army up at Lawson. And this guy, you know, the Army always decreases the size of the Army when they shouldn't be decreasing it. And so this guy had been in the end of World War II, and then he got called back in for the Korean War. And then at about 55 or so, they decided the Army shouldn't be this big. And so the only way to get his 20 years in was to go back from the major to E6. Well, he was a really neat guy, so here I was, a second lieutenant writing efficiency reports for a major that was working as a sergeant. You know, anyway, I liked him. And so I thought I'd just stop by and see Sergeant Magnus on the way back to Amity where we live. And I went down and we said, okay, we'll go to the mess hall and have a cup of coffee, because that's what Army people do. And so we went down there, and he said, what you doing? And I told him. He said, you know, down at Pleasant Hill, they're looking for somebody with your experience. I said, oh, I've probably never put a uniform on again in my life. And he told me, he said, well, it's a pretty good job. He said, they pay $7,000 a year, and they get something called drill pay. If you're a National Guard, you go in on weekends, you get money, right, correct? Reserves. And how much is that? I don't know. But anyway, the job I thought I had paid $4,495 a year. And there he was talking about some of $8,000 or so, you know. So I turned around, came down to Pleasant Hill, and applied for the job. And you know, you're politically correct when they advertise for people for jobs then, so I went in and interviewed. They said, your experience, yeah, I've been doing this and everything. They said, do you smoke? No. You don't smoke and you're in the Army? I said, do you drink? No. And they looked really sober. I thought, boy, this is bad. They don't think I can get along with people. So I said I enjoy sex a lot. And I paid for that remark. But they did hire me. So anyway, just like a lot of people, and show me another picture, some other people you might know. That guy, I believe, is Ron Whittle, and I think he married Bob Pennican's sister, did he, or somebody know about that? Anyway, he worked for the Guard for a long time after closing the missile site. When I retired, when I was age 60, he was down in Jeff City, and he helped me get my retirement pay started. So, see, that's how he got started. Go to another one. Oh, that's Everett Black there, and he didn't stay around local. Go to another one. Okay. I think that's Don King right there. And you all know Don King. And Don stayed with the Guard long after the missile site closed down because he became a sergeant and he run the, when we had target practice, they got a thing that made a false airplane for us to shoot down, and he had a little trailer of his own we sent him to school for, so he could provide us something to shoot at when we were doing drills and stuff. And later he became an AST for 1140th MP Company, and then he became the manager of the motor pool up at the Raytown Red Brick Road or something up there.
He was a warrant officer too.
Yeah, he became a W5, I believe. And so he made quite a career out of it too. Go to another one. Okay, this guy here is Ned Barker, and he's
David.
Ned Barker. His son's David.
What's that on the thing, David?
Well, maybe his name is Ned, wasn't he? He later became our supply sergeant. And in the military, supply sergeants are something else, because I'm going to talk about one of the inspections we did really good on. And they call that a command maintenance management inspection. And that's where they came out and checked every cable to see how tight it was. They checked all your drawers to see if you had the right number of vacuum tubes in it. And they checked to see all your weapons were there, and if you had the right number of field jackets in the supply room, and everybody had one. And we made 100 scores, perfect score, and I think it's the only time anybody ever made one. But that supply sergeants were something else, because they always wanted to make sure they had enough, and so they would lie, cheat, and steal, and do anything they could to have enough stuff. And so whenever we had inspection, the best part of passing the inspection was to go through and count it and take all the stuff they shouldn't have and put it in the truck and drive it to somebody's home. And unfortunately, one time when I was later on, we hired some guy that he was overly honest. And he turned me in for turning the stuff home. I didn't take it to my home. I sent it to Bill Stevens' home. He lived out there by Phone Jack. And this guy turned me in, and the inspector was really friendly with me until they asked if anybody had IG complaints. And he went in, and boy, the inspector, I like this at me after that. And but the lucky thing about Bob Gooderl, who was a name that you all might remember, he was the head full-time guy out here at Lone Jack in the battalion staff. And we had a battalion headquarters along with the missile staff. Well, he taught me to do this, and so when the inspection came about for me doing this bad thing, I got by pretty easy. So. You want to show me another picture? Paul Beeson right there, and, you all know him. He was the parks clerk in the fire control area, and, he got mad at me because I wouldn't let him go to another job, and he quit selling more than feed after that. Also, he gave me a haircut because we wanted to trade haircuts. We both needed one time, and I ragged him for the next 50 years about me getting my turn to give him a haircut. It never happened. So you know what I look like for a while. Okay, we had several inspections and we had operational readiness inspections where they come, we had to be ready to fire. We had a 4-week period. One period, we had to be ready to fire a missile in 15 minutes. Another period, we had to be ready to fire a missile in an hour. In another week period, we had to be able to fire a missile in 3 hours. In another period, we were supposed to take our stuff apart and make sure it worked, maintenance. And so they come in the middle of the night, knock on the, come in our gate, and the gate guard would call up, say, they're here, and they'd say, blazing skies, which is civilian for battle stations, And so we'd have to get ready to fire a missile. And that we had several that were perfect, but not all of them. A lot of times one of those vacuum tubes would go bad just when you wanted it not to. And another thing, we had short notice annual practice. And so we'd go to Fort Bliss, McGregor Range, and we'd set up a missile. The launcher people would, and fire control people would go and check out all of the fire control area. And then they'd provide us a drone or something to shoot at. And we shoot a salvo, and we had a battery control officer, which is me, and we had to track this thing on the acquisition radar, transfer it to target tracking radar, and fire it. And so one time we did that. First time we did it, we were excellent. And that was April after we took over in February of '64. But this time we went up down there and we had a perfect score. And it says we were the first one. I know there was one other battery out of the 200 or so that were in the Army that got a perfect score that year. And some people are really good on the internet. They can look it up and see that we had a perfect score, and I was the battery commander at the time. So that's a picture of us. I don't know why I was out of uniform with the rest of them, but there's Colonel Cooper. He was our battalion commander, and these are, I think Bob Gooderl was over on that side. But this is the crew. I think if you look real close, you might identify some of those people. But my people made such a big deal over having it when we were flying back. That's American Flyer Airlines. They hired the cheapest, most broke-down airline in the world to fly us to Fort McGregor Range. And one time we went on Saturn Airlines, and the tire was flat on the plane. We had to wait for them to fix the tire before we could take off. And another time, we almost flew into Franklin Mountain, which is right there by Fort Bliss. Scared us bad. But these guys are so proud. They talked to the stewardess, and she talked to the pilot. So I got to sit in the pilot seat on that airplane coming back. So I'm a qualified airline pilot. Got another picture, or is that the last one I gave you? I think that's a picture of us whenever we were in formation one time, and there's me, and there's Glenn McVeigh, that was one of the platoon leaders, and all the board officers in front there. So we did all of this, and in October of 1968, we said, okay, you're too expensive, we gotta send more people to Vietnam, and we're gonna shut you down. And so they shut a lot of these missile sites down around the country. But here I was a battery commander, and I signed for every piece of junk we had out there. And so it took me 3 months to turn it all back in. And we had to package up our missiles and take the warheads out and box them up and do all of that. And so by the 1st of January, we were done. And so on the 6th of January, they passed a magic wand over our heads and said, "You're a military police officer now." And we became the 205th Military Police Battalion. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah.
Well, a couple. How long did it actually exist?
Well, they started, the active army did on the 1st of February, or 1st of November approximately, in 1959. And so then we closed down on the October the 15th of 1968. So what's that, 9 years?
That's the 9 years.
Did you ever fire any missiles?
I probably fired more dollars worth of missiles because I fired 4 annual service practices in Alaska, and I fired 4 here. And being I was a hot shot battery control officer that they had, I got to fire 2 missiles every time I took my turn at firing.
Where would they go?
Well, in McGregor Range, they went out, they had a lot of desert north of there, and they did artillery firing there and everything. So we just go out there, and I'm sure we scattered a lot of missile pieces all over the desert out there.
But
Now-
none were ever fired from Lone Jack.
What?
None were ever fired from Lone Jack.
No, they were never fired here. All of the continental United States units went to McGregor Range. And in Alaska, we fired from one of our sites. In that one picture I showed you, way back when.
Oh, that may have just been my hand.
Yeah, anyway, this is the launcher area from the site that we fired from Alaska, where the missile tracking radar couldn't keep up with the missile. And I shot a missile that went straight up and blew up. Yes,
At the beginning, you said that Pleasant Hill should gear up for 30 households. What was the population of the base at its maximum?
the more pieces of equipment got, the more people we had. I think at about the end, I had in the battery, had about 112 people, and then the T&E table and workstation equipment for the missile site, there were 129 people, and the rest of those guys were guardsmen that just came in on weekends. And they were part of our outfit. If we'd been federalized, they would have had to been there with us as well. And also, we had a battalion headquarters there, and there were approximately 12 full-time people in the battalion headquarters, because they were over the battery up at Lawson as well. So, all of us, none of us lived on base except the nights we had to be there within 15 minutes. And the people like Bree that had to be there overnight to keep the missile site. If he was a dog handler, we had 4 dogs. And he and Gabe Cersei and Bill Atterbury and back. So
Ed Bax is my neighbor. Ed Bax was my neighbor.
he was, okay, Ed Bax, dog handler. And you can say what you want to about dogs, but I think they were sleep happy.
I didn't quite catch what year it changed from the regular army to you guys, but
Military, that was on the 15th of February, 1964, when we took over. And they sent a bunch of people down to Fort Bliss to train them as a package. And that's the way they started the missile site. They brought the officers and the key sergeants and warrant officers that they needed. And they sent them down there to train together. And so when I went on active duty and I went to Alaska, I was the first replacement lieutenant of this package that gone to Bliss and come up and taken over the missile sites there. So I was the juniorest person you could ever be when I arrived up there. But they did the same here. But a lot of these guys were hired right out of the active Army, and several of them, like you said, the girls around here all knew all these guys. And they liked the girls, so they stayed here. Dewey McCommon was one of them. You know Dewey a lot of it. And of course, Paul Beeson and Don King, and I'm sure there's others that I just escaped my mind.
It's kind of tough to get a date when you're my age and a guy.
What?
It was kind of tough to get a date when you're my age and a guy around there.
Yeah.
We didn't have uniforms like this. Guys at the base.
Dewey McCollum was regular army.
No, he was, because he was regular Army, and he was in trouble all the time, because, see, whenever the first sergeant got after Dewey, which is quite frequently, they had a big microwave tower there, and Dewey would climb up the top of the tower, where that old first sergeant couldn't get up there to get him, and he'd wait up there on the tower until the first sergeant forgave him, and he could come down.
I was stationed with Dewey McCollum in 1959.
Okay, so you were out there in the regular Army then, right?
Right, 59,
So,
60, 61,
Alan
62.
Stark was there with you? Alan Stark?
Start?
Yeah,
Don't sound familiar.
okay. He was at fire control. Don King was there, was he?
That sounds familiar,
Yeah.
but most of us
Bill-
served out there back
Bill
in 59
Stevens?
and 60. We're all pretty well all gone.
Bill Stevens was out there with you, right?
Don't recognize that name.
Walter Klingenfield?
Mayorfield, yeah.
Gillespie?
No.
Okay. There was a lot of regular Army guys took their discharge and joined up with the National Guard then.
Other questions?
I had a question. You were saying that you were in trouble for sending stuff
For
abroad.
hiding stuff?
Yes, but then you said this guy helped you get out of trouble, but I didn't understand exactly what.
Because he taught me how to do that.
He taught you how to hide it without getting caught?
No, he was his boss, and he was the one who was supposed to discipline him.
Oh, so.
Battalion full-time guy out there. You know, you gotta live and let live.
Hey, I think one of your pictures showed the underground control room. Did I see one of those pictures?
I don't, no, those were all in the fire control area, I think. Maybe,
I'm talking about the underground part where they kept the missiles.
let me see here.
Is that what's?
That's underground right there. You see.
No, I'm talking about actually a picture that was down inside the room itself. It was underneath them white doors. It was underneath them white doors.
See?
Yeah, well, I'm talking about,
You
there's
wasn't
one
allowed, you
still
wasn't allowed
on,
to take pictures underground.
on Whiteman Air Force Base, there's still one in existence.
I don't know when the.
Yeah, I've been in it.
Are they still there?
Yeah, it, and maybe there's one more in the United States that still exists.
See, our missiles were on a rail, and it had wheels on it, and we could run them over to a launcher that would raise them up from horizontal. And so the crewman would go downstairs and they'd push one over on the elevator and it'd move it up. These roofs down there were probably 18 feet high, ceilings were, and they were, I don't know, 160 by 100, 120. They were pretty big pits down there. How big were they, Bernie?
Pardon?
How big were those pits?
How big were they?
Yeah,
Well, them missiles was about 16 foot long,
yeah.
and
The booster was another 10 foot long. I
and
think they were
rail
20.
down there, and there was 16 missiles at one point.
Yeah, there was 8 in each one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a big cavity in the underground.
Yeah,
But we could have 8 missiles elevated, ready to shoot at one time.
on that one picture you were showing there, with the missile launching pad is, and to the right of that, I used to mow a field out there, for Perry Hodges.
Oh, really?
And anyway, the cornfield in between it, but the field that I was mowing, anyway, I keep going up and down, and every once in a while I see something black up in the, on the other side of the cornfield. It turned out it was that missile
Oh,
there with the black tip popping up.
they were probably playing games in there.
9, 10 times I think went up and down.
How did you survive your childhood?
I was standing on the tractor seat.
Okay, we got a little, on a personal basis. Bill come to the 19 missile site. There was a battery commander ahead of him that you never seen. You know, he got his nose up in the air, and but here comes Phil Moore. And I said, I think he's just one of us. This guy down there, down there. And anyway, when he came here, I went up to North Missouri, and I hauled a load of Hereford cows down here for him. And we've been ever since, and he's become one of our people. Yeah, very influential in the area.
Anything else?
Well, I wanted to tell about the wife side of it. I mean, when we came back to Missouri, I thought, well, we're going home. But our home's up in northwest Missouri. And when he got the job down here, I said, okay. But we drove into Pleasant Hill, and the first thing I saw was the Garner Tavern. My name was Garner. And I thought, well, no. And then somebody told us that Mrs. Browning had the house for rent. Mrs. Browning was Carrie Eklund's mother. And they had this little house around the corner.
211 North Independence Street.
Still there. And so we lived there 3 months, and we found a farm out in the country. Well, during the 3 months we lived in Pleasant Hill, in March, there was a major earthquake in Alaska, from which we had just come. And I didn't know whether people there that I knew were alive or dead for a long time. And in mid-April, we had a major tornado in Pleasant Hill. We had just bought the farm out on VB. We went up to northwest Missouri because I got homesick on a Sunday afternoon. And Monday morning, there was all this news about this big tornado in Pleasant Hill. And so we came down here not knowing whether we had a rental house, whether it hit our place in the country, but it missed us both places, just by a little bit.
We got quite a connection to Gideon Jones too, because when he came here and bought a farm, his great-grandmother, Willa A. Yeti, had money, and they loaned us money to buy this farm. And so we bought it out on BV as 40 acres, and we were happy there. We had cows and horses and all kinds of junk. And then we went to Methodist Church, and his aunt, his great aunt, Missouri Bailey, went to church there, and I guess his grandfather told Missouri we paid off pretty good, so Missouri decided that we absolutely had to buy their farm when they wanted to move into town. And so, thanks to Willa A. Yeti and our reputation, his great aunt made us buy our farm. And that's what we did.
And then you went and tore the house down.
I tell you what, I retired in 1990 after 30 years in the military, and I spent the next 10 years scrubbing, re-sanding the floors and fixing on that house. And then my wife looked up on the wall and she said, "What's that black spots there?" And they were termite holes. So we got some insurance and tore it down and built a new house.
Thank you, Phil. stories are even better. Well, that concludes the formal part of our meeting here. If anybody wants to stay, we want to make sure we honor the Kennedys. In fact, Bob, I don't know if I can get you to come up here or not. We have a little thing for you. Yeah, well, I can meet you halfway, whatever you want to do.
Gotta be patient.
I can't see anything. That's why they got rid of it.
We put together a little plaque. So I'll read it here. 25 years, awarded in grateful recognition, Bob Kennedy. Pleasant Hill Historical Society Museum would like to express our sincere appreciation for 25 years of commitment as curator. Your loyalty and dedication has served as a viable role and success of Pleasant Hill Historical Society Museum. Therefore, we are awarding you the title of Director Emeritus.
They retired you, you don't have any duties. In fact, you don't get, you're not important, you're really important. Except that I think that the emeritus usually gets library rights, get to come in, look around, that kind of stuff. But that's usually, you're an emeritus too, you know.
You're emeritus twice.
Yeah, now we're both my title.
We're both old professors, so
Yeah,
I don't know if that's the only place they use emeritus or not. But.
So when Pete came back here, really glad to see him because first of all, he was a college professor, and I like college professors. But also because he's Bob Shortridge's son. And I got to know Bob Shortridge pretty well my first few years here. I was here about 1998 when I became curator. So I've been a curator, 26, 7 years or so. My last project I wanted to work on was the history of the Historical Society. I don't know how many of you know about the history of it, it's got quite a history.
76, is that when it started?
No, 70 is when it was formed. But it was formed as sort of an arm, not an arm, but an appendage of the Cass County Historical Society. But in 1971, the building, all the stuff burned down here. And at one time, I don't know how much history you'll want to remember, Marjorie Buckner, some of you might remember her. She was the founding mother of the Historical Society, and her and some others, of course, but Marjorie's the one I got to know better. But anyhow, she noticed all this vacant land here was all burned out and everything, and she thought, and all that was left was the building over here, the old barber shop, was just a shell for it, but the front of it was still there. In the front, the museum over there is, of course, as most of you probably know, is the tower of the old Gamble Mansion, the old Stone College. So if you look at the windows over there, one window, and then the door, that the two windows were above the door. Now they're next to the door. But anyhow, so that stayed through the fire and everything. And I'm glad they did that. We tried to get that to make it part of the historic district because of that. But it was going, the other part was not going on later. But it's about time to do it again. 50 years is what we want. But so much I want. The history of the Historical Society is great. And I think you all are wise in coming here and getting involved. Right now, we're real lucky. We got Pete Shortridge, we got Terry Wilson, and Henry Sobbers, 3 full-time members. Henry's mother was the president one time, for example. And of course, those 3, and we have the Lileys came in, they're more newer members, I guess. Pete should be yourself newer members. You've been here a long time too. But, it's got some history to it. So when you come here to visit, ask questions and give answers too. Because that's how I learned everything, was by talking to people. And most of us, people like Martin Buckner and his dad, gave me a lot of information when he was here.
Marjorie Buckner, my dad had rival drugstores, by the way.
I represent Campbell's.
Yeah, this town, you just go through the history of this town, this, what man, and the pieces of it, like even just the building down First Street, which those were built, most of them 1860s, 66, 67, after the train got here. And so we had all that history. And there's a lot more history floating around, so if you want to get involved in historical research, Pleasant Hill is a good place to come to. Now, I've always said, I've always said that if you want to know anything about the history of Pleasant Hill, like that, it's all in that room over there. The room where the old part. It's all there someplace, you just have to hunt for it. You can, of course, go down to Cass County Historical Society, or you can go out with a computer now. You use a computer quite a bit, don't you? You search through there and everything. But, so one time we had a real viable newspaper, you know, Pleasant Hill Times. It's not here anymore. You all remember Kurt Powell. And, he was a great guy. He really was. But, and I think now, the Historical Society here has a board that's gonna really do good things. Of course, they got rid of me. That was okay.
I'd like to give you a cane to swing.
Yeah, but see, I was going blind, and I can't read like I used to. Of course, hardly any. And plus, my legs, I can't walk very well. I got lots of trouble. My brain's still good. Just ask me any mathematical question, I'll try to give you an answer. But that's about it. So that's why I'm retired, because I just couldn't do a good job anymore, I don't think. Any questions to ask me? Well, you're really now, don't you?
So what year did you come here?
As a curator?
Yeah.
1998 June. In fact, who was it? Oh, Terry Wilson found that in the newspaper, 1998, that when I was appointed curator by Mary Margaret. That was a little unusual because curators, I was appointed. She just made me a board member. Nobody voted for me.
No, she changed the bylaws.
She what?
She changed the bylaws to make you on the board,
She changed the bylaws.
which probably was not wise, but
But
well,
it's been a lot of fun. This is the best part of my life is this last 27 years. And because I got to know so many people. One of the problems is those people aren't around much anymore. They've all died off on me. Except for Steve.
Thanks a lot.
I'm gonna get out of the way. He's got a lot to talk to you about. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Bob. We got some cake laid out. Come and do this.
Hey, I have just a couple things that I want to mention. We also have at the front, thanks to Pete, who's done lots of research and stuff. So if you're into history, there's lots of books that Pete has wrote that is up front that is for sale. The other thing is, with all you people here, and I know a lot of you are from Pleasant Hill and have been here a very long time, and if anybody would love to come give a speech like Phil did and tell about life in Pleasant Hill as it was growing up, or if you have something interesting that you remember at our next quarterly meeting, we'd be more than happy to, so just let Terry Wilson or Pete know that you're interested in wanting to give a